I remember at some point Ray, Korn's drummer, followed me, and we never like chatted or anything. He followed me. Like I'm not even joking. One day I just got like a DM on Instagram, and he was like, "What's your number? Somebody's gonna call you tomorrow." And this is my number. I didn't know what it was for, and the person that called me, I think she assumed I already knew, but that wasn't the case. So at some point in the conversation, I'm asking her, "It's like, yeah, what are the dates?" And she's like, "This and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I think I can do it." And I asked her like, where can I like find your music? And she goes like, "Oh, we have like a YouTube channel." I'm like, "Okay, how do I find it?" And she's like, "Korn Official." I'm like, "Oh,
We're here at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey for a System of a Down and Korn's East Coast run of stadium shows, sitting with Ra Diaz of Korn. Ra, thanks so much for sitting with us.
no, thank you guys. This is an honor. I'm a fan of your work,
Oh,
so
well, likewise.
yeah, I'm excited to do this."
Well, let's start with the most important thing. First of all, congrats on the recent birth of your son, Rafi.
Thank you. He's
Absolutely,
5 months tomorrow, so
absolutely
it's very
adorable.
new.
And I wanted to ask, how has it been mixing dad life with, musician life, tour life? What's that been like?
Oh, it's. I mean, well, first off, I want to say shout out to my incredible, amazing wife, Emily, because of her, it's been, I don't want to use the word easy, but it's been very happy, for me. And luckily, it also happened at a time that we haven't been gone much. So for the most part, I've been able to be home and, enjoy these first few months and learn a lot, fail a lot too. But, that's how you learn. And I'm just loving it. It's well, you're at that too. You know the feeling. It's like, I never knew. People think, oh, you know how love feels, but then you have a kid and it's like, wow, this is a complete different universe. So yeah, it's incredible. Very happy. And this is gonna be his first show ever.
Wow.
Yeah. So tonight and tomorrow it's gonna be his first time seeing Papa on stage doing his thing.
It's hard to put it into words. It's just something that people will tell you before you have it, but you can't experience it.
Yeah, it's like now I get so many things that at first I was like, yeah, whatever, and now I'm like, oh no, yeah, this is real, So I'm loving every second of it. I love putting him in outfits and taking him, to cool places, meet cool people and all that. And he's 5 months. Like I don't know how much of it he will remember, but I'm just very proud of him, and I want to bring him with me everywhere to see the world. Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you play any music in the house for him or?
We sing to him a lot. I don't necessarily sit with like a guitar next to him, but we, I guess, wrote all these like kid songs that we know make him laugh and stuff like that. So, uh, we have songs for like, I don't know, changing a diaper. We have songs for like when he wakes up and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe we're gonna make a kid's record or something. He does enjoy rhythm. I'll say that. Like we haven't necessarily played like a record to him, but sometimes he's like fussy, and I start just doing like and he's like, wow, and starts smiling, and so there's something in him that is definitely, you know, showing that he might be interested in music.
Well, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, you've been on a whirlwind ride since joining Chord in 2021. Can you just walk us through how that came about and sort of what it's been like since?
Well, it all happened very quick and kind of out of nowhere. Like, long story short, like this was like mid COVID, era or whatever you want to call it. So I was pretty much just sitting at home, uh, making videos and stuff like a lot of other musicians were. And because of these videos, sometimes I would see like, oh wow, like we were doing a lot of like Rush songs with like Charlie from Anthrax and Alex from Testament and stuff like that. And some of those videos like got a lot of like exposure, and I would notice like, oh wow, this cool guy followed me, on Instagram, or this person reposted it. And I'm like, oh wow, cool. And I remember at some point Ray, Korn's drummer, followed me, and we never like chatted or anything. He followed me, and then I ended up doing a video with this drummer, incredible drummer named Arik Improta, and he's a very creative guy. It's like he's not just drumming. He's like makes sounds with like breaking glass and a skateboard and this,
Oh, sure, I
like
know.
very like artsy. cool stuff, and he invited me to play bass on it. And some time went by, and he hasn't posted it. And I asked him, "It's like, hey, are you gonna share that video?" And he said, "I'm waiting because Monkey from Korn might record guitar." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." So that ended up happening. He jumped on, and this is all with us not meeting each other in person. It's all online. So he did that for Eric, and then when we posted the video, Monkey started following me too. But again, we never you know talked or anything. And then I don't know, fast forward, like I'm not even joking. One day I just got like a DM on Instagram, and it was like, hey, from Ray the drummer, and he was like, "What's your number? Somebody's gonna call you tomorrow." And this is my number. I didn't know what it was for, and just out of nowhere, next day I get a call and he say, "Hey, we have this situation, and we need someone to like jump in." And they asked me like, "Are you interested?" And I'm like, like, how can you say no to that? Like, I grew up. I was born in '84, so when their first record came out, I was 10. So listening to that first record when you're 10, it's there's no other way to describe it than like life changing. So I mean, it was just something I couldn't say no. And at the beginning, it was just gonna be at one tour, and I was still in Suicidal then, and nothing was gonna interfere with anything else in theory. But then, they needed me a little longer, and things starting to like overlap, and at some point, I just I just kind of asked them, it's like, hey, like, am I gonna continue helping you guys out? And they said that they were gonna need me, so I kind of had to make a choice and talk to my band at the time, Suicidal, and they were happy for me. Part of me was just sad because this happened during COVID, and I never got to do like a last show, knowing that it was a last show with Suicidal. But I mean, I'm very happy with everything that happened, and I'm still till this day loving every second of it, and hoping it keeps going. I'm enjoying it. It's been 4 years now. So, and a lot of the band brought also a lot of happiness into my personal life. Like I met my wife while when I joined them, and now we have a kid and everything. So it's like I owe a lot to this band, and I'm very proud to be in it, helping them.
No, I watch interviews to prepare when I'm going to meet someone. I think I remember, and you can tell me if I'm misremembering, when you were telling the story about the Instagram and Ray following you and getting on the song Monkey, that when they called you, they didn't tell you it was for Korn, and you didn't. Is
Well,
that true? That you didn't know right away?
I
Is that
think it's more the person that called me. I think she assumed I already knew, probably, that, oh, like, Ray told me what it was for, but that wasn't the case. So at some point in the conversation, I'm asking her, it's like, yeah, what are the dates? And she's like, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I think I think I can do it. And I ask her, like, where can I like
hear the
find your
music?
music, or because I thought at first, or maybe I got confused. Also, she called me in the middle of, like, I was like driving, and
Yeah,
and I was like kind of not. I mean, I was paying attention, but I
right.
was like not following every single detail. And at some point, I go like, "Do you need me to do something?" And she's like, "Oh, you can, like, film yourself playing a couple songs." And I'm like, "How can I find your music?" And she goes like, "Oh, we have like a YouTube channel." I'm like, "Okay, how do I find it?" And she's like, "Korn Official." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then that's when, like, it was like shock and panic, and at the same time, like, wow, what is that? Because, like I said, it was very unexpected, and just it happened in the middle of COVID, when I went from like not knowing when I was gonna be able to play a show again, to like getting a phone call to like, "Can you come and rehearse with Korn?" Like, it went from like the almost like depression to like the biggest
Highest
happiness.
highs.
And obviously I was like, yes, I'm very interested, and I'll give it a shot.
But it was cool because it sounded like you said yes without even knowing what it was, And
Well,
I
yeah, I
love I
mean,
love
I
that.
love music, and I love playing music, so I mean,
But I just love that. So where can I find your music? What's the like? And they're like, Corn. Where can you find Corn?
yeah.
Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, every
But
streaming platform
yeah,
on the world.
it was funny, and I guess it made it a little even like
Yeah,
sweeter for
yeah.
me,
I like that part of the story. I thought it was
you
funny.
know. But yeah, like I said, I was driving, and when they said that in that phone call, I legit called my friend, canceled the plans, turned around, went back home, learned a bunch of songs, and I think in a few hours I sent them like some videos, and everything went from there. Yeah,
Had you seen them live before?
yeah. I saw them actually in Chile 2 or 3 times, and then once in the States. But I never got to meet them or anything. I met at the NAM show once. I said hi to like Fieldy like in 20, I don't know, 2010 or 2011, something like that. But yeah, I basically met everybody when I first came to the first rehearsal.
And have you guys played Chile?
Not yet. No, you know,
Is that going to be like a really cool full circle moment for you to be on
I
the
did
stage now
play.
looking
I did
over?
play Chile a couple times with Suicidal, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Every show is very special, but going to Chile, it's like being able to do this in front of like my parents. My family is still in Chile, and my closest friends. It just has a different feel. So I'm hoping it happens, and hopefully not just Chile, and hopefully like South America in general.
And now let's talk about tone because obviously Fieldy had this iconic tone,
Yeah,
and it's funny because in a way it's like controversial even though it shouldn't be, just because
yeah. I've never understood why it's so
well, and by
controversial.
the way, me either, but that especially bass forums can just devolve into
Yeah,
like darkness. And I read some threads where I was actually curious one day on my own, having nothing to do with this interview, just how would I even get that tone with my bass? And so I started researching it, and the comments were like so divided.
yeah.
And I'm like, guys, you're missing the point. Like, there was nothing that sounded like this. No one ever just took their bass and started playing it as like a percussion instrument and a harmonic instrument.
It's like
But
a weird thing because like you can go back to like I don't know when I guess the first time I don't know Larry Graham like slapped the bass, and I bet you there was like 1,000 people going like you can't do
all right,
that,
thankfully there weren't forums back then,
Yeah, but it's like
But from a
I
technical
mean
standpoint, because I think I love this tone, I think you recognize it's
I think
special.
at the end of the day like it all comes down to the word you said. It's iconic.
Yeah,
You can like it or not like it,
but
but
you know what? But also, and you know this, how hard is it to have a sound that when you hear it, you're like, I know what that is right away.
yeah,
You could just hear that.
yeah.
So, and again, I'm never here to pass judgment on anything, and I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. I love it, you love it, but what I want to know is how did you get that tone? And also, when you came in, was this almost a moment where they said, well, let's see what you do? That there's sort of this
It's
expectation of, but
yeah.
was it like narrow or did they give you
It's
some?
funny because like there was never like a like a sit down conversation of like, oh, we have to achieve this tone or anything. It was more like we got together and we just started looking for what sounded right to everybody. Like from basses to amps and stuff. Is like you like this, and then also uh, that was in a rehearsal room, and then it translated to okay, now we're live. So also talking with like the front of house, like hey, you need more of this, more of that. So it was never, at least as far as I'm concerned, like oh, we gotta look for this. It was more like let's find something that makes everybody happy, that cuts through, that complements the guitars and the drums, and so I think it became more that, like you were saying, like the forums, like if you go in those forums, everybody's like, oh, like there's no mids in it, like the mids are like scooped
We
and all that.
we probably looked at the same forum, by the
Yeah,
way.
well, I mean, they all say the same, but if you look at my bass and my rig, you'll see like I have tons of mids in it, and it just works and it sounds good, and we've been doing shows with like System of a Down, and Shavo sometimes comes up and says, oh, dude, I can't believe how your bass sounds. It's so good. And we play festivals with like hundreds of bands, and everybody's like, dude, the tone is amazing. And they don't necessarily refer to it as like, oh, it's like, the old school tone. The comment is just like the bass sounds good. And I think that's what we were looking for, just something that sounds good to our ears.
Now, did you have to adapt any of your technique because obviously you're slapping the bass, but it's not in the typical, sort of like funk slap?
I wouldn't say adapt. It was more just kind of figuring out what worked best for me. Because like I always say this in when people ask me, when I first joined, like I'll take it back when I first joined Suicidal. I've always been enormous fan of Suicidal, especially all the bass players in Suicidal. There's a long
Right.
list of incredible bass players. And with Suicidal, I grew up listening to that. I learned like the record, the live version, when Josh Paul played this version, I learned his version. Then Robert Trujillo did it like this, and I learned that version. Thundercat, well, I tried learning Thundercat, but so when I first joined Suicidal and I came to like jam with them at the room, I remember at some point I looked at Mike, and the singer, and I asked him, it's like, do you want me to do it like Josh? Do you want me to do it like Robert? Do you want me to do it, like Thundercat? And I remember he looked at me and he was like, I just want you to do it like you would do it. And that really like stuck with me. So I don't I don't wanna like try to necessarily pretend to be someone. I'll rather kind of do respectfully, like my own thing in a way, trying to keep the feel and vibe and uh, that it's in the original songs, you know? So I didn't really have to adapt much. It was more kind of like trial and error and see if the guys were like okay with it. It's like, hey, you like this? And they were like, yeah, it sounds great. Okay, cool. So it was more that. I don't think I mean, I obviously did my homework and went through live videos and looking at the hands and this and listening to records and, oh, what gear was used in this song or album, whatever. But at the end of the day, it just became a very kind of natural situation where it was like, you guys cool with this? And they were like, yeah, it sounds great to us. And it was like, okay. Then we just moved forward.
I love that answer because it's really more about honoring the legacy as opposed
Yeah,
to going
absolutely.
like specifically has to be. Because at this stage, any band that's been playing for, decades, there's a good chance someone's needed to come in at some point. And then there's that question of you've got a new musician who's got new energy, great ideas, and if you give them as much room as you can keep the legacy of
Yeah,
the
and
band
I
going and
mean, to be fair, like they've been doing this for now, what, 31 years, I believe.
roughly, yeah.
Uh, like, I mean, their first album came out when I was 10. Like, who am I to like come in here in this camp and like tell them how to be Korn?
Yeah.
So my take on it is like, I'll try something and see what the feedback is. If they like it, they don't like it. We're all very open, telling each other like, oh, this sounds weird. So it's just that like we're just exploring and finding and not just bass, like it's a constant also working on guitars and drums and all that, just to try to get the band to sound the best way we can.
And how did you approach learning the catalog? Because anytime you step into a band, whether it's Suicide or whether it's Korn or any band that's been around, I mean, God, how many albums deep are they by the time you join? It's a
Oof.
lot of music to learn.
Yeah,
So do you have like a system of how you do it, or do
what
you sort
I
of like
did, well, Suicidal was
like prioritize some of the hits and work
Suicidal,
backwards,
I
or
pretty much already
you
knew
knew
pretty
it,
much the
right?
whole catalog. And then Korn necessarily, like, I didn't necessarily know how to play all the songs, but I was very familiar from hearing it. Like I never sat down and learned every song when I was a kid, but I listened to the records nonstop. So like I don't know, these structures and changes and oh there's a break here and there, like that was in my head already. So it came more to like sit down and kind of figuring out what was being played because some things are like very low tuning and it's hard to super hear every detail of it. But again, like I would just come to rehearsal and say, hey, this section, I'm not sure if I got it right. And they would be like, oh yeah, it's right, or oh this one note is different, this is an open string, stuff like that. So they helped a lot. And then what I did, I just kind of, went back, I went on the internet and went back for like the last 5 years, like kind of comparing set lists a little bit and be like, okay, so this is the map, like this is what happens. And I don't know, I chose like I think it was like 25 songs and I learned those 25 and then or 30 or something, and I show up to rehearse and I was like, this is what I know. And they were like, oh well, we're good. And then with time we add stuff, or they tell me, say, hey, next tour we might do these two songs that you haven't played live, and sometimes I already know them. So it's just communication. Like I wasn't expecting to, I don't know, learn like, 10 plus records
Right.
and just be like, you know, third record from fifth song from the third record and just go like that.
Yeah.
I'm like every time before a show or a tour, I send out a little field text and say, hey, are we doing anything new? Is there any like curveballs coming that I should like prepare or whatever? And it's just that it wasn't that difficult, honestly. I feel like probably for everybody it would have been a similar approach. Is what made sense for me.
Well, I like the set list thing because a lot of times the intro will be some variation of, I loop the records, I transcribe. Some people chart, some people don't. Then I listen to it in the car so I can memorize forms. But the
The
set list
car
thing
is a
is
big
really,
one. I
yeah,
do the car
just like
a
endless
lot.
playlists, right,
Yeah,
on rotation, or
like
they'll loop the section that's complicated. Maybe it's like an odd
yeah,
meter.
like sometimes what I do is like let's say I sat at home and learn a few songs. I don't necessarily have to play them, 20 times. I play them once or twice, and then I already know the notes. And then, like you said, I'm driving, listening to it, and in my head, it's like visualizing kind of like the
Yeah.
fretboard, and that's a big one. That helps a lot.
And you switched from Spectre basses to Schecter basses. What inspired that change, and when did you make that change?
It was a mix of kind of, I guess, Schecter became more like easy and accessible because I also at the time I was living in LA and Spectre was based, on the East Coast. So and it was more like kind of like made to order basis and stuff like that. And then I just started touring so much that if let's say something happened to a bass, I wasn't able to like ship a bass and wait a few months to get it back and fix it. So I met the people at Schecter. We became good friends. I love them, and it just became that we were there in the same city. If I needed something, I could pick up the phone and in an hour I could be at the office. Hey, help me with this, and they would, they could work on the bases and stuff. So it was a mix of kind of like, I guess, commodity, or it was just easy for me, more practical, if you want to say it. And also at the same time, I realized like how good their instruments are built, and I could get the same results of what I was looking for with the Schecter. So it was just I mean, I still love Spectre basses. They're incredible. Like everybody knows that. They're probably some of the best basses ever built. You know, but for me, it was more practical to make the switch with Schecter, and they were able to like kind of facilitate better what I needed at that time, like getting multiple basses, setups, and swap pickups here and there, and oh, I need something tomorrow. They were like, come grab it. So it was just easier.
Yeah, and I think also, just again, because there's information you and I will have and take for granted, but for someone who hasn't done this, they should just understand, what you're talking about is really utility. So
Yeah,
something like Schecter, and you do have things go wrong, things do happen.
absolutely, every day.
In a pinch, you can run to Guitar Center. It doesn't even have to be, and especially yours, like you were showing us, there's no
Yeah,
signature model even, so you can just go get a
yeah,
five-string Spectre and do a Korn show. And um,
the
when you're,
Schecter.
what did I say, Spectre?
Spectre. Yeah.
I meant Schecter.
Well, I mean, if I find a Spectre, I could do a
Right.
show too. But
But
I
just
still have my Spectres. Like I
yeah,
have them at home, and I love them. And the Spectres that I actually used, they were like handmade for me, and it took them months. And you know, at first, I was like, I want a Spectre jazz bass, purple with this pickguard, and then in my head it's like, they can probably send it to me next month, and it would take like a year. And in my head, I was like, oh, it's a factory. And then I remember the first time I was like on the East Coast and I went to visit them, and it was just like a little house, in like I think it was Woodstock, New York, or Kingston, I think, or some in that area. And yeah, it was like a very small operation. There was like three people there, and I remember I opened that door and I walked in and I looked at him and I was like, I apologize for sending so many emails. Like, can you change this? It's like, oh, is it ready? And I was like, oh, I didn't know it was like this. The bases they built for me were amazing, and I still love them. And sometimes I record with them, stuff like that. But like you said, it just became that for my needs, Schecter just made sense.
yeah, and also, just to piggyback off that when you do tour, you'll often have, you've got your line input list and you've got your gear list, and there are times when you're a show comes up quickly or it's, overseas or something, and
Yeah.
you can't necessarily transport every single thing every time. And so sometimes it's just easier a bigger company will have,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
distribution.
Like for example, this happened very out of nowhere, uh, kind of overnight. Uh, so I was able to like, pick up the phone, call them, and say, "Hey, this is happening. What do you recommend me?" And they were like, "Oh, come here, try this bass, see what you like." And that's what I mean. So if it wasn't for all the support that Schecter has, you know, supported me during this, because now I've been with Schecter since I think 2018, something like that. It's like almost 10 years, and like I said, I consider them family. Like even earlier this morning, like Chewy, the guy that paints all the bases, he's out of nowhere. Like he didn't even know we were gonna do this. He messaged me and he's like, "Hey man," he sent me a photo of like some guitars he was painting, and he's like, "I miss doing stuff for you. Send me something so I can paint it." And I'm like, I love those guys. Like they're amazing.
um, and now Korn plays in a lot of drop tunings, but we were talking, you keep it pretty standard, but it's drop A.
Yeah, Ace standard. Yeah.
So that's the only
So
tune, that's the only string that
yeah,
you're tuning
I'm
differently.
able to do everything. At least the set list that we usually do. I can just do that. I don't like the drop.
The hip shot.
Yeah. I'm just used to knowing, like the distances and where things are. So I'll rather detune the bass like fully and just kind of work. A lot of it comes from like I used to play at church a
Was on,
lot.
just take a step back. When you said, so it's not drop A, it's A but standard. So
Yeah,
the whole bass is down, the
yeah,
whole step.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you can keep
So
all the
my
same.
positions are the
You
same.
right. You're just moving you're starting at different fret points, but the patterns are all
Yeah.
the same. Okay. Okay.
It comes a lot from like when I played at church because I
Because
didn't.
you guys played Korn at church.
Yeah, no, but we will do all those like gospel songs and
Sure.
stuff, and in LA, and I didn't grow up in that scene at all, or in that in this country at all. So I would show up every Sunday, and we would play four songs that I've never even heard in my life, and they would be like, oh, it's in D, and I'm like, okay, cool. So the fifth string always helped. I'm used to playing five string, and then from there, I would, because I didn't know the songs, I would listen to just like kind of like the vocal melodies, and I would know where it's going. So I got used to like, oh, the fifths are here, this, that. So I'd rather just have everything in the same positions, and I know where to move, instead of unless it's necessary, I'll do a drop or something. But luckily, it's not. Um, but yeah, it's just what I'm used to. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing the drop, you know. But sometimes I'll even, because if you do a drop and you can do the open string, like let's say one is in B instead of A. Sometimes I still rather just play the second fret and do than swapping basses and all that. Like I play this whole show with the same bass unless something happens and I have to swap. But I don't, like I said earlier, I just like keeping things very simple, and I don't need to like overcomplicate my own life.
No, for
So
sure. And I
yeah,
can tell you from doing these interviews, there is no right answer.
yeah, it's
It's
just
what
whatever
works for
works for
you,
you. Yeah,
100%. And that's
and it's what I know. It's what I'm used to. That's my comfort zone, and
listen. There's
I don't
some
I don't feel the need to get out of it.
No, listen. There's some tours where I mean, we did interviews with people that were using, I don't know, 6 or 7 different tunings.
Yeah,
And so I mean, can you imagine your poor bass tech? You've got like
yeah,
12 different basses
exactly.
because you need backups for each, and they all have to be labeled. I mean, you imagine someone gives you the wrong bass by
Yeah,
accident, and
yeah.
but
I don't know. I just
no, it makes
in life
sense.
in general, I like keeping things
Keep
simple.
it simple.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now, what's a corn show like from your perspective?
fun.
Fun?
It's amazing. I mean, it's like living a dream, and you know, I just love seeing the front row people's faces. It's like we were saying earlier. The moment people hear like, "Are you ready?" and then it's just explosion of emotions. It's hard to explain the feeling unless you've been on a stage in a similar situation. It's even better when you're doing it with surrounded with people that you absolutely love and admire too. I grew up admiring these dudes, and I wouldn't say, oh, now I'm one of them, but I mean, I'm sometimes I don't know, last tour in Europe, we were playing a venue that it was like a Roman Coliseum, 2,000 years old. And I had a moment of like, a sold out Roman Coliseum in the south of France. And, and I'm looking around and I see everybody and I see, Head and Monkey and Jonathan Ray. And I'm like, what's happening? Like, how did I end up here? So I don't know. I just appreciate so much. And at the same time, like we learned, 5 years ago, like things can come to a stop abruptly overnight. So I just try to enjoy every show like it could be the last one. And that's why I try to play as hard as I can and, jump around and smile. People say I smile too much, but I mean, how can I not smile? I'm living the dream, so I can't complain about anything. I'm just very happy to be here.
I love that. Well, you talk about playing every show like it's your last. What was your first show with Korn like?
It went quick. Like it was like a blur. I remember just being very nervous. I got on stage and then I was like, kind of like back in the dressing room and everybody was like, "Oh, that was great." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I don't have like a specific like vivid memory of it. It's funny. Like it was almost like I was like blank. But I do remember I was very, very nervous. I
Where
didn't want
was
to
it?
say it. It was like outside of, it was like a small festival, like outside of like Detroit. I don't remember the name of the festival. It was like a weekend thing. We did like two shows, like I think like a Friday and a Saturday. That was like my very first
And
thing.
how long had you been playing with the band at that point? Meaning, how long had you, like, how far was that from that phone call you got where they said, hey, can you
Probably
learn?
like, I mean, I might be wrong, but I
Roughly.
want to say something around like a month and a half,
So you had a month,
maybe.
you had like 4 to 6 weeks to get show ready.
Yeah, but I mean, that phone call happened, and then I didn't even get to meet them or rehearse with them like weeks later. So, and also, like, again, I mean, I hate to bring it up all the time, but I mean, again, it was like middle of COVID, and at the same time as I'm like, okay, I got this amazing phone call, and I was like, it can get canceled tomorrow. You know, I was like, okay, I mean, that's why I never told anybody, I never posted about it, nothing until I actually played like a show, because I was like, I don't want to tell everybody. It's like, dude, I'm gonna play a show with Korn, and then the day before it's like, oh, everything's canceled because of COVID. So even the day of the show, I was like, somebody can show up and be like, oh, we're done, you're shutting this down, So my mind that day was like all over the place, but it went well, and it's been 4 years and I'm still here, so I must be doing something right, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's it.
Now, we talked a lot about that specific kind of iconic Korn sound for the bass, but with, Head and Monkey taking up a lot of sonic space, how do you define the role of bass in Korn, right? It's like, it's obviously the traditional role, but maybe a
Yeah,
little bit off. How do you describe it?
I don't know if it's a role or something, but the way I approach it is like this is how I see like my job, if you wanna call it that, is I want to be as locked in with Ray, the drummer, as I can. So, like you said, Monkey and Head, they can have total freedom to do their crazy stuff that they like to do, knowing that like we have their back. So that's kind of like how I see it. I just want to make sure we are like this, like rhythm, section, so they can feel comfortable enough to do their thing and, be Monkey and Head, you know? So that's like how I approach their role, I guess. I'm not necessarily looking for like, oh, they're, doing this, so I want to get in between and show that I can do this or no. No, I see my job as like just locking in with Ray, keep that groove going so they can, shine with the stuff that they do so well, the stuff that we all love. So that's how I see it, more than like trying to find my space in the scene. I'm very comfortable just being a little bit in the back with Ray and just looking at each other, and we're like, yeah, that was cool. So yeah, that's the only way I would describe it. I'm just trying to create a solid foundation for them to do their thing. You know, that's how I see it.
So talking about locking in with Ray, what is it like to play with Ray? What does it feel like to be in a rhythm section with him?
Oh, I love it. I mean, first, I love him personally. Like, he's awesome. We became, really good friends. If I go to Nashville, I stay at his house. It's like, I love that guy, and he's an incredible drummer. You know, for a bass player, it's like I guess he makes my life easier. You know, in general, I've been very lucky in my career to play with really, really good drummers. Like, before Ray, it was like Dave Lombardo and Brandon Persman. I played with Arik Improda, and I've been very, very lucky when it comes to the drum department. But it's just fun, Like we have our little things we're playing, and and we look at each other, and I make fun of him, he makes fun of me. It's just, I think that's what helps us, like our personal relationship. I think is what helps us, like being locked in live. It's like now it's like natural, It doesn't feel like a job. I have to log in with this dude. It's like
Yeah.
it just happens, you know.
I got to do a little sidebar because you mentioned Dave Lombardo and I
Yeah.
love Slayer. I need a Dave Lombardo story.
Uh,
Go.
well, the first rehearsal that I had with Suicidal and Dave, I didn't really know that Dave was gonna be playing drums. Apparently, I never know anything.
Right.
And I remember when I got to rehearsal, I parked, and I see him getting out of a car in the parking lot, and I went to him and I like fangirled for a minute, like, oh my God, Dave, and I'm from Chile and he's Cuban, so I was like trying to speak in Spanish to him and all that, and then I went downstairs, and they were like, oh, they're in, I don't know, Studio B, whatever, and I opened the door and he was setting up the drums, and I'm like, oh no. No, I love Dave. Like I always called him like Uncle Dave, and he taught me a lot of like just like being on the road and tour, and my family loves him. I record a lot of music for him till this day. He has his project with his wife, and I record the bass for that. And I just love that guy. He's the best. And I'll say this, like this is I don't know if it's a story, but a fun fact. I remember just in Suicidal, we used to run around the stage all the time. But in rehearsal, we would just be kind of there. So the first rehearsal, I was just playing next to him, and I remember the very first show. We go into the first song, and I'm like on stage right, and I just go running to stage left to stage right. And I remember that very first show, I run in front of his drums, and the wind coming out of his double kick like hit me in the leg. And I was like, I mean, everybody knows he's like, the godfather of like
Yeah.
double bass, but I felt it. Like it almost like moved me. It was incredible. And I remember like till this day, I'm like, I've never felt that before with anybody else. He's just the best.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're playing, hard rock or metal bass, I mean, having Dave Lombardo as the the truck
That's
driver,
what's
the
gonna
bus
get.
driver, yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's kind of epic.
he's driving a whole train.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the best.
So you mentioned in a lot of interviews being inspired by Flea and American rock bands. Did you also listen to any of the bands from Chile, whether traditional bands like Los Jaivas or more modern stuff like Los Tetas?
Absolutely. Even when I was, I think, 10 or 11, some time ago, my brother found some photos. I would travel from one city to another and like sneak into like Los Tetas rehearsals when I was a kid. And like growing up, like bands like Los Tetas, there's other bands that you probably don't know them, but Los Tetas, Chancho en Piedra, Los Morton, Papa Negro, De Quirusa. I don't know. There's just too many amazing Chilean bands that, especially on like the funky, like funk rock side, that are just unbelievable, incredible bass players. I'm very lucky that because I was going to their shows so young, you know, I can, a lot of those people I can this day call them friends. So yeah, like Chilean music till this day, like sometimes, you know, I'm at home and I grab a bass and I play the records that when I was 11 years old, and I still remember everything. And yeah, so if anybody seeing this needs good Chilean funk rock, Los Tetas, Chancho en Piedra, Los Morton. I would think those three are like the ones you have to check out, and especially mid '90s. Chile was very, very, not just me. influenced by Flea. Like the whole Chilean music scene was very kind of, everybody was kind of trying to do what like the Chili Peppers or 311, Fishbone, where bands like that were doing. So that's like my heavy background is that kind of genre, you know, that is like kind of funk, but punk and aggressive, but also very funky and almost hip hoppy at some point, and I think that helped me a lot to like develop the pocket and groove that at least I think I need to also play in Korn. I think it helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure for me, I am definitely not an expert. I happen to just know someone from Chile, and whenever I meet someone from another
I'll say
country,
this on the way home,
mhm,
look up the first record of Los
I
Tetas.
listened to it
It's
already.
called Mama Funk. The
It's
bass
awesome.
is
Just the intro,
incredible.
even the
Yeah,
intro.
the bass is just. And also, they were like I guess like 15 or 16 when that record
Oh,
came
see,
out.
that I didn't know.
Yeah, they were very young, and
I say Los Javes for me was sort of like not really my speed.
well, it's like
It's
Los
more
Jaivas is
traditional,
like
right?
it's like from like the 60s and
Yeah. I
70s.
mean, I
It's
like some
more.
of this stuff, but
It's
it,
great. It's I mean it's a legendary band,
yeah.
But if you ask me what really like made an impact on me, I would say more like the 90s, mid 90s like funk scene in Chile. It's just huge. Like
So we'll say,
till this
guys, start
day,
with Los Tetas, and then you can go down the rabbit hole. But it's
listen
definitely
to
very
yeah,
cool.
I would say if you want to hear very funky, aggressive bass and also they were like rapping in English,
It's
in
really good.
Spanish
It
and
really is.
German. It's just start to finish that record. It's called Mama Funk. It's just I think it's a masterpiece. And to think they did it when they were like, kind of like still in high school is just incredible. Amazing. Fun fact, they kind of played my brother's wedding. Yeah.
Okay, we gotta expand on that.
Yeah. So my brother, was getting married and he wanted to like have a live band. And by then they were already like broken up. I made some phone calls and we got to get like the guitar player and some of the guys that were in the band. And obviously I played bass. So we
That's
didn't
awesome.
necessarily play Los
Sure.
Tetas music. We played a couple songs, but we
Yeah,
also played like Stevie Wonder and this and that. But that was like the
that's
the
pretty
house
awesome.
band,
That's awesome.
kinda.
We'll switch gears for a second. If you could switch places with Shavo and play one song with System of a Down, what would you pick?
I would say maybe Sugar. Mostly because I think that's the first one that like hit me. Like the one that I was like, a kid and I heard it and I was like, what is this? What's happening here? It's just such a fun song with different moments and stuff. And I would be fun to trade places with Chavo. I think it would be fun, even if it's for one song. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll ask him if he's down to do it one day. It's funny because like we were just on tour in Europe, and Chavo was doing some shows with us with his new band,
7 hours.
7 Hours After Violet. And one day he had to, for whatever reason, I don't remember what happened. He had to like ride our bus to the next show. And the first thing he said, like he jumped on the bus, and I looked at him, and he was like, I'm taking your job. And I was like, oh man. I was like, and I was like, well, I'm fine taking yours. So I love that guy. We've become, closer lately. And when I lived in LA, I would go to all these like soccer matches for the LAFC, Los Angeles Football Club, and he would always be there. So we would run into each other at the matches and hang out. And I just love that guy. Every time I see him, it's like it just puts a smile on my face. I love him.
Yeah, well, I already kind of ruined the surprise, but he picked Blind.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, makes sense. It's funny because like I would think what he felt the first time he listened to Blind is probably what I felt when, even though I'm not on Blind,
Right.
but I mean probably what I felt the first time I heard their song. It was just like a big moment of like, what is happening here? I didn't know you could do this.
Well, if you guys sit in on a song, I'll know it's because I
Yeah, yeah. You never
put this in
know. I
motion.
mean, crazy things happen. That's how I ended up here. So you never know.
Let's go back actually a little bit to Chile. When you were when you were there, and you've talked a lot in other interviews, so we don't need to cover that. Just, I love the stories with the Chili Peppers waiting by the elevator. I love the interactions, the way you kind of endeared yourself, I should say, is a better way. Endeared yourself to the Chili Peppers, and just ate up, consumed music at such a rabid pace. But did you ever imagine back then just whatever your dream was, how was it even this big, or was it just I
I
don't know how
don't
to even ask
know.
the question.
I don't really know how to answer it because in a way, every time I thought like, oh, this is as good as it's gonna get, somehow it keeps going further. I'm just happy to be able to do what I do with the people I'm doing it, and hopefully continue to do it for a long time. Music in general has just brought so much happiness to my life. The people I've met, the places I've been, it's just like it's not just about like the sold out stadium show. It's just everything that goes with it. Like spending time with the crew and becoming friends, and going to a restaurant, everybody together, and have like a family dinner. And then like I said earlier, like I mean, if it wasn't for music, I would have never like met my wife and get married and have a kid, and being the happiest that I've ever been. It's just
Do you remember what age you were when you sort of decided that that's what you wanted to do, or that you were at least going to try and do music?
I don't know if there was like a exact
I
day,
don't mean like March
but I
17th.
mean,
I mean, but just more
I
like,
mean, I always knew I wanted to play music, like since I was
but
like
were you also, meaning,
9.
were you also pursuing, college or just another
Well, at
backup
some
plan or
point when
something? You know
I
what I mean?
turned 18, I went to school for like multimedia design and stuff like that. Like 3 quarters into like the first year, I remember one night I was like doing a big, assignment that we had, and it was like 4 a.m. And I remember we were like cutting little newspaper to replicate like duplicate like I think it was like a Picasso painting or whatever, and it was all over my bed in black and white newspaper. And I remember that day I was like, what am I doing? Like this is not what makes me happy. And like pretty much next day I went to the school and I was like, what do I have to do to like kind of quit? They were like, all you have to do is just like write a letter and explain. And I did that and I quit, and I told my parents. I was like, I think I actually want to like go to jazz school. And I was like scared. I was like, are they gonna like yell at me? And their reaction was like, we knew it was gonna happen. And we made a deal actually. They were like, okay, so if next year you're going to music school, you're gonna start now. And I started like a few months before going to music school. I took lessons with like to start like reading and this and that and all that. So
It's kind of beautiful, and I guess we can actually talk about this now. You've got a kid, right? So you and I are both kind of far from that, but I already think in my head, like I want my kids to be happy. I want them to do what they want to do, and also I have a vision of like sort of maybe what I think they might do or hope they might do.
yeah.
But I think you were blessed, man, because some parents are sort of like, look, we really want you to do this, versus like, look, we just like we had you because we want
Yeah,
you to
I
be
mean,
happy. We want you to have a good life,
at the same time, I know, firsthand how rough it can be to pursue music. So
No, we all do, man.
there's a part of me that it's very scared about him wanting to pursue music. But I mean, if for whatever reason he decides to do that, I mean, I'll do my best to have his back and not just try make life easier for him, but like warn him about stuff, or making sure he knows how to pick the people he wants to work with, and just to make sure everything's safe, and and doesn't get involved in weird situations
But
and stuff.
I think people have this, and I say this in a lot of interviews because I've been blessed to have conversations like these with musicians like you. And I forgot who said it. I think it was a rapper, Russ. I don't even know what he does, but he said if you're putting food on the table and paying your rent with music, then you made it. If you're
Yeah.
teaching music, you made it. If you're playing in a wedding band, you made it. And I think that was such a great way of looking at it, because if you have this dream of the 1 in a million, your odds are one in
Yeah.
a million. So if that's you're of course you're going to be disappointed. But if your goal was to play music every day, and you're willing to do those opportunities, whether it's teaching or recording or
And I
touring,
mean,
whatever
and
it
at the
is,
same time, like I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with like having a day job and then at night you go and play a gig. Like
100%.
I think it's completely valid, and I've done it. And I was very happy when I was doing it. So
Right. It's not like you failed. Like if
to
you're
me,
if
it's
you're
more about just being able to play music with people you love and have fun, and you can do that in completely different scenarios. You can be touring, you can be playing the bar down the street every Friday night.
look, I'm sure you'll I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've had some of my best musical memories in someone's basement. No one was there. It's
Yeah,
just me
absolutely.
and four
Yeah.
guys. No
Some of
one
my
over
some of my
best jams, some of my best work no one ever heard before,
some of my happiest musical memories are when I was like 14 and I had like a Chili Peppers tribute band, and we were playing like every single party with my friends, and that was it, like we had no aspirations, nothing, like it was just having fun.
I've seen him Van Halen a couple times, but when they did, I saw the first reunion tour with Hagar. Oh, sorry, with David Lee Roth
Mhm.
with Wolf on bass, and David Lee Roth was just doing his thing, where he's just like, he starts rambling off to the
Yeah,
crowd, but it was awesome because he was telling all these stories of when they started out, and he's like, man, just so you guys know, like we're so grateful still to be here to this day. You got to understand where we started. We used to play backyard parties, bar
yeah,
mitzvahs, weddings. I mean,
yeah.
can you imagine someone had Van Halen as a bar mitzvah band? I mean, I just like, why couldn't my parents get Van Halen for my bar
Hey,
mitzvah?
you never know. Like, life is
I think we
weird
had a
and it takes you
DJ or something,
places.
you
Yeah.
know?
If you want fun, David Lee Roth story, you gotta talk to Ray.
Yeah?
He was his drummer for a long time. He
Oh,
has
he's got the
crazy
goods. He's
stories.
got the
Yeah,
goods.
yeah. So if you see him around, make sure to ask him.
We're gonna change directions. Um, when you're not holding a bass, you're most commonly holding a tennis racket. Can you talk about this side passion you have? Because
It's funny because I don't know if it's a side passion anymore. Like I feel like now I'm taking tennis more seriously than music. But it all started. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, my grandpa he worked. I believe he was the vice president at a tennis club. So I was exposed to tennis very early. But I never really played. I always liked it. I watched it and all that. Um, but then eventually, I met my wife, and when we started dating, she was a very good. Well, she still is a very good tennis player. She played Division 1 college tennis and all that. So on our dates, at some point, I guess I mentioned like, "Oh, I like tennis," and she was like, "Let's go to the park and hit." And I guess one thing led to another, and I just became obsessed with it pretty much. And like if you go in like at our house, if you go to like the basement, like half the basement is just like tennis gear, rackets and tennis bags and balls everywhere. And even Rafi, our son, we're like his toys are like tennis rackets, and we took him to like the tennis Hall of Fame, and he met like former number one were like tennis players and played with them. I'm not played tennis, but I
sure,
mean,
sure.
like they were playing with him and making him laugh, and it was just. I see it as a very healthy, happy sport. I'm lucky that I get to share that also, that passion with my wife. Hopefully with my kid too. So yeah, I don't know. I just love it, and I want to say for the last 2 years I've been playing a lot of tennis everywhere in the world, everywhere I go. If there's a day off or a morning of the day of the show that I have the time, I try find a place or someone to play with, or I'll pay for lessons or whatever is necessary. But I'll rather go play tennis than sit at the hotel room all day. It's I don't want to go crazy at the
What
hotel
what
room.
kind of what kind of courts do you like? Clay,
My
grass,
favorite's clay. It's
clay?
what I knew as a kid. It's not that easy to play clay here in the U.S. Because when I say clay, I mean the red clay,
I know
like
what you mean.
the
Yeah.
not the weird green
Yeah.
clay that you can find here. But last tour when we were in Paris, I got to go to like Roland Garros, and they let me play there on their clay, and it was just amazing. Like my bass has taken me to like wild places, and now in a weird way, my tennis racket is also taking me to like crazy places. So I'm enjoying it. I guess it's a hobby that it's becoming very serious. Like every day, it's getting more and more serious.
It's cool. I mean, I'm a little envious because I am horrible at tennis, and the only thing I have in common with anyone good at tennis is I have John McEnroe's temper. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's
well,
not a good
I don't
situation.
know if that's a good thing,
It's not,
but
man.
it's fun to
I
watch though.
did I did well, probably for everybody else. I did tennis camp maybe one summer, and I smashed my racket. I just
Well, when I was a kid, like I think I played maybe for like a month or a couple months, and I remember I played an actual match, like a tournament, and I lost, and I got very
you
frustrated, and,
know
and I threw my racket and this and that, and I was like, I'm never playing tennis again. And that was it. If it wasn't for that, I would have continued, and I wish I would have continued because it's very hard to learn.
it's so
It takes
hard.
a lot of dedication and patience, and but once you start seeing a little bit of progress, it's just you just can't stop. Like at this point, if I stop for a month, like kind of like the last 2 years, like it wasn't worth it. So I try to play at least every week, once or twice.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about tennis though. It's the only I played sports my whole life. I never got mad when I lost. There's something about tennis when I
Well,
hit.
I like the fact that it's like kind of like a solo sport versus like a team sport. Even though I love playing doubles, my goal in tennis is to get to a point that I'm as good as my wife, so we can play together as a
I was
doubles.
going to ask, what's the closest you've ever come to beating her?
You want me to answer that or not?
Or is the answer not close?
My first time playing after coming back from a baby.
I beat her twice. Twice. Yeah. Well, once you quit because you were like, my shoe is bothering me, so I'll take that as a win.
He needs everything he can get.
Hey, I'll take everything again. And then once that we did like a tiebreak, I think, and I don't know.
My first few times after having this baby.
Yeah, but she'll admit that I've made a lot of progress, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But now you're wiping
Hey,
the floor with him again?
last
Okay.
weekend I got called to play on the court at the Tennis Hall of Fame like induction weekend with like the Bryan brothers were there. They were getting inducted. Kim Kleister was there. You know, everybody. And I guess I'm good enough to the point that they were not embarrassed to make me come on court and play with them. So I mean, I'm
Well,
also
hey,
doing
look,
something right.
if this music thing doesn't work out, we know what your next career will be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm too old for it, but I don't know. Maybe I can be a tennis coach or something. I would enjoy it. You know, I definitely see that I have a passion for it. I just regret not doing it earlier. That's all. But I love it.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you so much for taking some time
No,
out, sitting with
thank
us,
you. And
chatting
again,
life
it's
and
an
music.
honor. Hello to the entire bass community. We're probably the only group of musicians that I would dare to say we actually have a community and we all love each other. So
We certainly do.
let's keep it that way.
And we love
There's
you,
no
so.
need to hate each other. Yeah, everybody love everybody.